Hi, and welcome to another episode of Better Golfer Today, hosted by Tyler Dice Golf. We have a great show planned for you today. As always, I try and provide the best insights into the golf world, whether it is tips, instruction, equipment, or anything else golf related. This week's main topic is going to be on wedge grinds. As always, I'll be sharing what I'm working on, and this week's tip of the week is going to continue on with the wedge theme. So, let's get started! Okay, first off, let me just say that I love doing nuts and bolts episodes with you all. I had a blast gathering as much information as I could for you with these grinds. Some were easy to find, others not so much. Just bear in mind that, I'm not covering every grind out there. It would be really, really tough to do so. So, just keep that in mind. Now, I'm putting all the information in a blog post, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Also, I'll have pictures and stuff of the various grinds. So, if you're at a computer, follow along on my website on said blog post. So, let's dig in. Hey, see what I did there? Dig in, get it? Maybe? No, golf humor. So, wedge grinds. What are they? How can they help you? How can they hurt you? How do you choose which ones are best for you? Well, how about I just explain the grinds and then discuss who they would be best for? Sound good? Okay, so we'll start off with the M grind. This is one of my favorite wedge grinds and is currently on my 60-degree wedge. It features heel, toe, and trailing edge relief for maximum versatility from the fairway and around the greens. It performs best with golfers that sweep the ball with a shallow angle of attack. It features bounce options in the 8 to 10 degree range, which makes it perfect for firm to medium turf conditions, but it still does well on softer days. This wedge grind is used on a variety of different lofts from 54 to 64 degrees. It's just a great all-around wedge grind, and did I mention it does well out of the sand too? So the M grind is a great grind. Like I said, it's on my 60-degree wedge, and I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. It's a great grind for, a variety of turf conditions. It's great for a variety of shots. You can play it square. You can open the face up. You can hit low chip shots with it. You can hit higher chip shots with it. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff you can do. The key is you need to have a shallow angle of attack. That is the big key with this wedge. So if you have a steep angle of attack, you are a digger with your wedges, this is not a good wedge grind for you. So keep that in mind. So needs to have a shallow angle of attack. If you're someone that sweeps the ball off the turf with your wedges, this is a great grind for you, especially if you play off firmer conditions. Nice, tight, firm fairways. It is a great grind for you. And like I said, it's pretty good out of the sand too, so great grind. Next up is the S grind. The S grind was developed after getting feedback from Steve Stricker on what he thought would work best with his swing. The trailing edge and heel are ground down to provide stability on full shots and maintain versatility around the greens. It is very popular on a lot of wedges, used for full swing shots from the fairway. It works best on softer to medium firmness turf conditions and fits a neutral to steep swing plane very well. Typically these wedges come in bounces around 10 degrees. Now, this is a great grind too. I'm a huge fan of this grind. I think Steve Stricker really knew what he was trying to get with this, and they were able to really put a nice grind together for him. And a lot of players use this grind. And it's pretty typical that you see it works well on softer to medium firmness turf conditions, because that's the kind of turf conditions that Steve Stricker seems to play his best on. Now, he's from Wisconsin. He lives in Wisconsin. And so, it gets a lot of rain up there and a lot of snow. And so they have softer turf conditions for a big part of the year. And so it makes sense that someone that practices up there, practices in those turf conditions, would want a wedge that would reflect that. And if you notice where he's played his best, he plays his best on golf courses that are typically bent grass, wall to wall. So stuff that's like in Northern California, when you get to Chicago, Ohio, he plays what good out there, Indiana, New York, Pennsylvania, parts of Virginia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Boston, Long Island, up there, all in the Northeast, the part of the Midwest, like, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Chicago area especially, and then jumping up into like Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado, up into there and into the northwest part of the country. And so he typically plays really well out there, and it makes sense that he would have a wedge that would reflect the turf conditions that he would be experiencing the most. So next up is the V grind. This is a great grind and this is a grind that might find its way into my bag really soon. The V grind is very similar to the M grind, but it has more bounce on square face shots, as well as increased versatility from the enhanced heel, toe, and trailing edge relief. The high measured bounce for square shots makes this an excellent grind for full swing shots from the fairway or rough when a steeper angle of attack is the norm or necessary, and the increased heel, toe, and trailing edge relief make it very versatile around the greens. This wedge is great for softer conditions, especially those fall, winter, and spring days in North Carolina, which is where I live. So this is a great wedge, and this is something that I've been looking at for a while, and it's probably something that's going to end up into my bag sooner rather than later. Big fan of the V grind, and if you look at the sole of the club, it almost looks like it's like an upside down V. It's not quite there. It's a lot more wider than that, obviously, but it's a great grind. I'm a huge fan of it, and so yeah, this might find its way into my bag pretty soon. Next up is the K grind. This is also another grind that I actually currently use. It's on my sand wedge. This grind was inspired by tour players like Adam Scott and Jason Duffner. The lower bounce option at 6 degrees means the wedge performs great at a firm fairways and still have enough bounce for bunkers. The sole is very wide on these grinds, but like I mentioned, it performs well from bunkers and from firm fairways. It has bounce ranging from 6 to 12 degrees and can be found on wedges with loft of 54 to 60 degrees. But yeah, the higher bounce options allow the wedge to perform better in softer conditions and with players with steeper angles of attack. The wider sole allows for more forgiveness with poor swings and makes it a good choice for the average golfer. So, like I said earlier, I have an M grind on my 60-degree wedge. On my 55-degree wedge, I have a K grind, and I have a 10-degree... Yes, I have 10 degrees of bounce on that 55-degree wedge. And that nice wide sole makes it really, really good from a variety of lies and turf conditions. I'm a big fan of it. I didn't like it so much in the 60-degree range, but that was, again, my personal preference. But I thought it was an excellent wedge as a sand wedge. Because it's something that, because of the wider sole, a little bit more bounce, it's a nice wedge that I can switch to hit lower chip shots around the greens, but still have a lofted wedge in my hand. So again, I really like that wedge. It's a good grind. And again, it's a great grind for the average golfer because there's a lot of forgiveness in it. Next up, the F grind is a great all-around grind. It is useful from a variety of turf conditions and swing types. Whether you are steep or shallow, this grind can work for you. It is mainly found on lofts from 46 to 54 degrees and bounces in the 8 to 14 degree range. These wedges work great for the golfer that travels all over to golf and wants the best all-around options for their game, or for the player that doesn't like to carry but 1 or 2 wedges in their bag. So most players on tour have at least one F grind wedge in their bag, myself included. So again, I carry an F grind, a K grind, and an M grind wedge in my bag. The F grind is on my gap wedge. It is a wonderful, wonderful grind. It is very versatile. Really, it's a great club. I'm a huge fan of it. It's a fun wedge to hit. You can hit it with a variety of different ways, whether you're hitting soft shots, high shots, normal shots, trying to work the ball left or right. This grind is really good for all of that. So, a huge fan. And like I said, a lot of tour players carry at least one F grind wedge in their bag. Some have 2 or 3. Not lying. It's true. You can look it up. But it's a good wedge grind to have. And I want to say it's the most popular grind that the Vokey line of wedges produces is the F grind, I think. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. Don't hold me to that, though. I don't like being held to facts, and I could just be making up. So let's move on to the L grind. This is the perfect grind For the super shallow swinging golfer that plays on firm conditions all the time and likes to pick the ball clean, the L grind is great on link style courses and those in South Texas. It works great from really firm greenside bunkers as well. This wedge is a terrible choice for the golfer that likes to take a divot. This wedge typically features loss around 60 degrees due to that it is rarely used when one is normally taking a divot. So yeah, this is a wedge with not a lot of bounce. For better players only, or for people that play on hard pan all the time. Like link style golf courses like St. Andrews. The P grind is next on the list. The P grind has what's kind of referred to as a channel cut into the sole of the wedge. And so it actually has like an indentation because it's literally there's a cut through the center of the sole of the wedge. It's really, really neat to see. It's a great wedge. And this makes the wedge act like it has a lot more bounce than measured. It is a wonderful grind, probably one of my most favorite grinds, but very rare to find now. In fact, finding information on it is actually very difficult. This is probably, again, my favorite grind out there. It is very unique and can be very useful to the player playing on thatchy and soft turf conditions around the greens, as this grind literally makes the wedge bounce off the turf. It's also great from firm fairways with a square face. I'm told Bob Vokey, the creator of the Vokey wedge, will make you one if you go through his tour player experience. But I cannot confirm that. That's a wedge I would love to get my hands on again. He did a limited run, like in 2010, when they did the groove change, and so he did a limited run of these wedges, and they sold out real quick. But they had the old grooves, and so for someone like me, it was useless. I couldn't get it because I couldn't use it, and it was really disheartening because I wanted one. And now I don't have one, and I still want one. Maybe someday. Bob, if you're listening, make me one. Next up is the T grind. This grind features a dual bounce sole. It has a wide trailing bounce grind that is great from firm conditions and for players that have a sweeping attack angle. This isn't a very popular grind due to the fact that it's only useful on really firm conditions, and most courses aren't that firm. This grind is also for better players due to the necessity of having a shallow swing most of the time. This grind is also used on high loft wedges, usually over 60 degrees. So, yeah. It's not very common and not used by very many people. Let's move on. The R grind. This grind is harder to find in the wild grind. It has a pre-relieved leading edge as well as excessive heel toe and trailing edge relief. It is designed to be used in medium to soft playing conditions, especially on thatchy turf. It is a really good grind, and I'm surprised it hasn't caught on with the golfing public. It's a good grind. It's again, I am surprised it hasn't caught on because it does really well in a variety of turf conditions, which the average golfer faces a lot of. If you play golf courses that don't have big budgets, you're going to face holes in the golf course that are firm, holes that are soft, holes that are thatchy, holes that are medium firmness or whatever. So you get a big variety of everything. So I'm really surprised it hasn't caught on more. But I don't even know if they make too many wedges with this grind anymore. That's how little it was adopted. So yeah, wow. That's about all I got for grinds. I think I talked about, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 different grinds. That's a lot. So yeah, 9 different grinds. So just so you know, if you are looking at new wedges and don't know where to start, I'm happy to help. I hope this podcast helped clear some stuff up a little bit. And like I said, I will post a link to a blog post with tons of pictures and again, written out descriptions of what I have here on said blog post on my website. So if you wanted to follow along and check out the pictures and see what's really there, you can follow along there because things can get pretty complicated. And that's about all I have on wedge grinds. Bear in mind, this isn't every grind out there. I said that at the beginning. Just the more popular ones. And in some respects, it's not even the more popular ones. It's just like what I felt like talking about. And if you consider all the different bounce, loft, grind options available, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different options for golfers. So you kind of have your pick of the litter. And like I said, things can get kind of overwhelming really quickly, especially if you can't try out said wedge at your home golf course. That was one of the nice things I always liked about growing up on the golf course that I grew up on. There was always wedges there to try. And a lot of your nicer clubs will let people take wedges out onto the golf course to see how they work. But that's not everywhere, and so not everyone's able to get that level of custom fitting for themselves. It would be great if you could literally take a whole bag of wedges out onto the golf course and try them out that way. But I don't think anybody does that because wedges might not make it back home. So let's move on. Let's move on to what I'm currently working on. And currently I'm still working on improving my flexibility and range of motion with my Yoga for Golfers DVD. It's going great. I am absolutely loving the improvements. Honestly, like, my hips love getting tight because I sit down doing a lot of golf stuff every day. And since I've started doing the Yoga for Golfers DVD, I haven't had any tightness in my hips anymore. So hooray for that. I'm also able to get into better positions while swinging the golf club with my body, and I'm able to get the golf club in better positions during said swing. So, yeah, huge fan of my Yoga for Golfers DVD, and I'm really, really loving everything that's been going on with it. So, hooray for that. Now, let's move on to the tip of the week. This week's tip of the week is on wedges and choosing the right wedge grind for you. Choosing the right wedge grind, the right wedge for you, can be a little overwhelming. But you just need to focus on where you need the most help. First, determine what course conditions you get on average. And then ask yourself, do I need more forgiveness or more precision when the club meets the turf? If it's more forgiveness, go for a grind with more bounce. If it's more precision, go for a grind with less bounce. If you go with less bounce and start chunking chips, you chose wrong. That's pretty obvious, right? You chose wrong if you start chunking chips left and right. So, in that case, go with a wedge with more bounce. Odds are, the more bounce, the better. Ask me how I know that one. I know because I went with wedges that didn't have enough loft and I started enough bounce, and I started chunking them everywhere. So, get more bounce. It's better for you, and you can thank me later. And that's all I got for you. That's all I got for you this week. Again, thanks for tuning in. I loved putting together this episode. It took a while to get all this information together, but it was totally worth it because it's something that's very important for a lot of people. Having the right set of wedges can literally make a huge improvement in your short game. So I really hope that you guys got a lot out of this and you learned a lot, and you can put a lot of this into play. So again, I always enjoy putting these together. I hope you got a lot of great information out of this podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.